Welcome to a higher dimension. I'm Gloria Danvers from Gloria Danvers Hypnosis in Orlando, Florida, and I'm your host for Higher Dimension. As a hypnotherapist, I work with everyday people who are having extraordinary experiences in the fascinating world of past life regression, therapeutic hypnosis, psychic abilities, spiritual awakenings, and paranormal experiences. Join me and my guests every Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. as we explore their powerful stories and extraordinary experiences together. Not only will you hear their stories, but we will also talk about what comes next. What happens after you have this experience? Does it change you? Who are you? What do you know now that you didn't know before? We'll dive into some deep, eye-opening conversations that you won't want to miss. If you're interested in working with me and having your own amazing hypnosis experience, you can contact me at gloriadanvershypnosis.com. If you're here listening to this podcast, chances are you are ready for me. You are ready for this experience. So shoot me an email, book a free consultation. Maybe it's time for you to shake up what you think you know about the world, about yourself, who you've been, who your friends really are, and where you're going. You can catch me on Apple Podcast, Podbean, Podchaser, Spotify, and iHeart.com. But right now, let's just sit back, relax, and uncover the hidden depths of the human experience right here on a higher dimension. Welcome, everybody, back to a higher dimension. I'm your host, Gloria Danvers from Gloria Danvers Hypnosis in Orlando, Florida. And today I have a very special guest. My guest is an author, a musician, an actor, and a psychic intuitive. In other words, he's a real Renaissance man. Thank you very much, James, for joining us. And James, you really are an amazing person on an amazing journey. Can you tell us about who you are and how your spiritual journey has unfolded during your life?
I'll give it a try. As I would say, as an only child, I had lots of time to ponder what made things work. And I just, for some reason or another, was very, very focused and aware that there were things going on around me that I didn't understand. Now, granted, when you're 2 and 3 and 4 years old, that's pretty natural. But I'm thinking stuff like, well, why don't people fall off the earth in the southern hemisphere? And could the moon really be made out of cheese? And all these kinds of things that would kind of, I wouldn't say kept me awake at night, but I just had this yearning like, I want to find out what the heck is this world is. One of my earliest memories was where I grew up. They would have these thunderstorms in the summer, and it would be really, really hot. And then the clouds would build thunder and lightning, and then it would pour down rain. As a little kid, I thought, well, wow, that must be God talking to people. Otherwise, how would you know he wanted to talk to you, or he or she? And then I came up with this idea. I said, that's what it is. When you look out the screen, parts of the screen would fill with water. And it would look like a little crossword puzzle. And I said, that's it. They just sent me a message. And then it hit me. But I can't read it. What does this mean? These are kind of like really fundamental questions that I was asking as long as I can remember. As a little kid, I used to think I could outrun airplanes. Things that in terms of, you would say, well, that's just a fanciful childhood, except that I never really grew out of it. Those belief systems didn't harden. They just kind of stayed open and receptive. And they kept asking questions. And they said, well, that's maybe a partial answer. You and I, we know that I'm challenged mathematically speaking. Well, that has a basis in my life in that in first grade, I think, the teacher was going over your basic math and they said 1 and 1 is 2. And I was like, okay. And they got to like 2 and 2 is 4. And I raised my hand. The teacher says, well, what is it? And my response was basically, well, how can you be so sure that it's 4? It might not be 4 every time. In fact, there might be places in the world or the universe where it's not 4. Maybe it's 4.5. It didn't go very well. And at that moment, I decided that math and numbers weren't for me. But I also decided that, maybe I know more than she does. In fact, it occurred to me that a lot of people didn't know very much. And so I started listening to what people were saying. And then as time went on, I started listening to what people weren't saying. Before I know what it is, I realized in retrospect that I was clairaudient. When there are times where I would look at things as a child and kind of go, well, of course that happened. And people would be kind of like, can you believe what just happened? Kind of scratching my head. You wanted to be respectful as a kid. But as a kid, I'm thinking, well, isn't this kind of obvious? Like, did you not just see what went down between these human beings? Now, you have to imagine, I'm growing up in the 60s. So there's a lot going on. And that impacts me because I was in a very transitional world with a very transitional family. Workaholics, they wanted so much to be accepted. So, of course, you internalize that as a young person. My first kind of mantras are, even as a little kid, I just want people to like me. I just want to play. And then it morphs to, you go to middle school and you say, well, it's not enough to be liked. I want people to think I'm cool. And then later in life, you want people to accept you. And then you want people to respect you. Well, in all of those phases, I failed miserably, right? For all the effort I realized I put into getting people to like me, what a waste. Because if they were inclined to like me, then why should I have to put any effort into that? So I guess that put me on a fast track to grow and experience certain things. I had to reach out to people that I thought had some comfort and wisdom. And thankfully, the universe was always there. There's a parable, I think, in the Bible, something about the person later in life is meeting with Jesus, I guess it was. And they said, well, this was all well and good, but why weren't you there when I needed you? And according to the story, Jesus says, well, look at the footprints in the sand. And the person says, what do you mean? He goes, well, when you started out, there's 2 footprints. Well, that one was you and the other one was me. I was there. And then they said, and then look at this part. There's only one set of footprints. And the person says, why is that? And apparently that religious figure said, that's because I was carrying you. So I had lots of people out there that I didn't even know existed and always felt that the wind was beneath my wings, which illusion or otherwise allowed me to be very fearless, absolutely fearless. If you told me something couldn't be done, I was like, really? Well, let me see about this. And of course, that's a trial and error experience. And you do find out certain things can be done and certain things can only be done at certain times. And I think that brought me to this idea that at first I didn't realize how lucky I was. And at first the idea of being alone was very terrifying. But having to deal with that really early on was a blessing. And having to cultivate the communication skills to ask questions to the right people was a blessing. Even the hurts and pain were ultimately a blessing because it put me in a place where I had to build up this an escape valve. Where are these feelings going to go? And in some very stressful times, holy cow, they had to come out, some sort of way. There again, what a blessing that I find music or music finds me, because it was life-saving. As a person, I don't know, 14 or 15, and hearing James Taylor or Joni Mitchell and hearing like, wait a second, these people are talking about feeling. This isn't tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree. This isn't on the sunny side of the street. This guy's talking about being lonely. I was like, oh, that's deep. So I let a lot of the external world shape and mold me. Thankful of that. And that then caused me to become very reclusive. The next phase was, how do I internalize this? How do I find boundaries? And miraculously, that's about when I meet you, who taught me a lot about boundaries. Maybe in this moment, it would be appropriate to say that although I had already spent a lot of time studying Buddhism and studying Hinduism and metaphysics, that basically I knew nothing about hypnotherapy. And that probably, probably like most people, when you said hypnotherapy, I'm thinking Johnny Carson and people barking like dogs. So when a dear friend of mine says that they're really into something and it's hypnotherapy, I'm open-minded. I'm going, well, okay. To my amazement, write this in capital letters, beyond my conception. Who knew? Who knew there was that much? For a person who spent most of their life trying to find out what was going on inside of them, to realize that there was like vast oceans and deserts and frontiers and continents unexplored. Holy shit. So as a initial skeptic, let me say that the results were powerful. I don't know that everybody who gets a certification in hypnotherapy would have gotten the same results. Compliments to you. I think you are insanely gifted in this particular thing. And as far as me being a very private person, I never would have said any of those things or been able to verbalize them. And for a person who writes songs and all this other stuff, it was also mind-boggling to me that there were all these things that I had trouble expressing. I mean, I knew that stuff that mattered a lot to me existed in a realm where there are no words. I know that there's part of our existence that predates words. However, I do also think that our existence coincides with communication.
When did you realize that you had an extraordinary gift in your intuitive and psychic abilities? Do you feel that your spirit guides played a part in wakening you up to all that you are?
Most definitely. At a certain point in my early teens, I'm not exactly sure what year, but lots of people started coming to me with their problems, questions, and issues. It was a little odd. It was also odd that I seemed to always have an answer. And equally odd to me that people would say, well, oh my gosh, thanks, James. Oh, well, hey, you're welcome. And then not long after that, people started giving me decks of tarot cards. And this is from a few different sources. And they said, you know, James, I'm just going to give these to you. I think you have this gift and you should use it. Or you could use it. So I like the pictures. I'm like, oh, thank you. This is really cool. I like the pictures. And I said, well, let's give it a whirl. And I said, well, this is interesting. And then I said, well, okay, no, this is too easy. Maybe the cards are telling me exactly what I want to hear. So I said, let me ask a question of somebody else. And it kept coming back. They would say like, well, how did you know that? I'd say, well, I'm just saying that I'm telling you what the pictures are telling me. And then people said, well, can I pay you for this? It's like, oh, shit. I don't know, because then I'm like really responsible for what I just told you. And then people started saying, James, you have to ask people for money. So I kind of compromised. I said, by donation only. If you're not completely happy with this, don't pay me. And then they said, no, you have to charge. Yeah, I was not looking for this. I didn't not want to be a psychic.
Now, I'm going to ask you, since your gift has really just enlightened so many people, and I know many of them personally, and it's been transformative for them, but how have your abilities enhanced your life?
Well, it validated how the universe is connected, right? I mean, you've certainly mentioned this to me, but scientific shows, you can watch them on the TV. What are they saying about molecular structures now? Is that atoms can be galaxies apart and still be interacting with each other. Okay, and you're telling me that we're basically atoms and molecules. And you're telling me that all the elements that are in the stars and in the universe are also contained in my physical body. At a certain point, being able to feel what other people feel helped me a lot. I didn't realize how lost and how hurt a lot of people were or could be at any given time. And if anything that I could say or find or discover on their behalf that could ease that pain or give them a sense of direction or peace, it hit me over the head like a sledgehammer. You better do this. If you do not, they never finished that paragraph. Like, well, what happens if I decide I'm not into it or I don't want to be bothered? But whenever I would start to feel like, maybe I don't want to be bothered, I'd be in a supermarket and some stranger would come up to me and say stuff like, excuse me, but you look like a really nice person and something just tells me that I should talk to you. And I'd be like, oh God, here we go again. All right, let's go talk. I didn't charge that person because I said they must have needed something really bad. I've had people call me afterwards, after readings or in between readings, and say, James, I was feeling so lost that I wondered if I was going to take my own life. And then it hit me. Oh, I can call James. Call James tomorrow. It made me feel that I had a value, that all of this wandering around in the desert was worth something, and that all the perceptions of things that I was seeing that made me feel different and weird is not fun.
But when you flip it around, it's all of a sudden it is precious and
unique or something.
Right. When you realize that, did that alter your perception of what you were doing and who you were, who you came here to be and who you were?
Oh, most definitely. And I'm working on this every day. This is still bigger than I have words for. People will say, no, I don't believe you. But I read the Bible cover to cover, not once, but twice. The second time, because people had been saying in the press that the occult and metaphysical stuff was actually the work of the devil. So I'm looking at the Old Testament and there's like all kinds of seers and prophets and, then they're not going, well, are you sure this message is not from the devil? Anyway, I had to make sure about that in my own mind. And I said, the ultimate conclusion was, I'm pretty sure that the devil's got better stuff to do. And secondly, that if I'm hearing voices in my head, I'm going to kind of know in many decades of life now, you purify as best you can your abilities to perceive. And so now I think it's not near any kind of perfection, but it's certainly clear. It's like everyone has a mirror to look in when they're born. And then as society puts things on you and you feel like you need to have a mask and a professional mask and a different mask for your family or whatever, then ultimately that mirror gets foggy. So the process of being any worthwhile, intuitive, but beyond intuitive, any person who's in the healing or counseling kind of thing has to have a clear vision of themselves. They have to have gone through that process to like, whoa, that's actually wasn't really me. I can't believe I spent a whole year trying to be somebody else. I'm not going to do that again. It's priceless. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And that was the ultimate payoff for me was, James, does it make sense to you now? All of these things led up to you being this person in this time. The universe is saying thank you in different ways at different languages. And they're saying, you gave your all. I have the body of somebody who like was in the circus for decades. James, were you the human cannonball? Well, more or less. But in this time, and here's a pivotal point, was that my body was hurting so much and it was taking so much energy to maintain this suit of armor that was a pivotal moment for me, because I said, well, maybe this is a question that my friend Gloria can ask on my behalf via what's going on inside of me. To me, that was like 1,000,001 long shot. But if I wasn't in enough pain to stop an elephant, I wouldn't have done it. I'm going to anticipate one of your next questions.
I bet you're not.
Yeah. Hey, what are you questioning my psychic ability now?
No, I'm not. I'm meeting your psychic ability and I'm heading you off at the pass.
Okay, go ahead.
I do want to switch gears here for a second, James.
Keep going, my dear.
You are a very well-known musician. I only use your first name out of respect for your privacy.
Okay.
But you have been a musician probably for 50 years.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you are more intuitive and connected through your psychic abilities to be able to create music that reaches people?
Most definitely. An astrologer would answer that question in saying that the age of Aquarius and all of these things were planetary influences that affected large groups of people. If you believe in soul, like group reincarnation, for all I know, like the hippies were old souls. It certainly seemed that way. Unbeknownst to me, I started writing songs when I'm 13 and 14 years old. And for a person who played clarinet in the band and basically taught himself guitar, you're not really expecting much response. But when people are going, wow, yeah, that's really cool, you go, well, dang, what else can I do? This is the most positive feedback I've had in a long time. And I just kept going with it. And what I saw was, oh my, look at all these people who have gathered to hear this at the same time. Now, my thirst for understanding has always been so strong that I studied jazz at a prestigious university. But beyond that, I also studied ethnomusicology because I wanted to know why music all around the world was so different. But then I said, my own theory, I said, I'm pretty sure that of the first artistic modes of expression, music and dance are the beginning. And if we are not, as in Dr. Louis Leakey, all Africans who descend from Lucy, then that DNA is inside of us. I may have more strands of it than someone else. But what I've noticed is when I write a song, it is basically tapping in to something bigger and deeper than me. And I've read where different kind of scientists have studied the work of Beethoven and Mozart and claimed that basically these guys were hearing melodies that were created by their DNA. Now, of course, me, the inquisitive mind, I'm going, how can a guy like Beethoven write a symphony for 33 instruments when he's deaf? Well, the answer is because music doesn't come from your ears, it comes from your soul. So this taught me a lot. I'm 14 and 15 years old playing in nightclubs, and I know what closing time looks like. And closing time, as Wilson Pickett said, funky, funky Broadway, looks the same in any nightclub you go. And I pondered that. I said, how is it these guys are like upper class? And these guys at this other gig I did are like, whoa, we in the bottom now. But closing time, the same thing. And the blues man said, ain't this the same thing that made the preacher lay the Bible down? Oh, yes, he did. So, yeah, that was my school. And there's a documentary that I would urge everyone to see. It was something that just came out. It's about funk music. These are my contemporaries, the godfathers of this music. And there are people in music that have come up to me and said, James, your grooves are on some of these records that they are sampling now. I go, well, I ain't seen no royalty checks, but whatever. Because I was just expressing what was in my heart, and you can't pay me enough for that. The next level of payment is when somebody comes to you in tears and said, I love that song. Oh my God. I have people that call me and go, James, I was singing one of your songs in the shower this morning. I couldn't get it out of my head because I was told in terms of spirit, I want you to write music that touches people as deeply as possible in as many ways as possible. I wanted to shake their booty, but I wanted to move their mind. And most of all, I wanted to open their hearts. And if I could get there, you could get there. That's basically what the music was saying.
That's pretty amazing. So in line with that, and you really do so many things and you do them all well. That's what I love about you. You're not a dabbler. Everything that you do, you really give yourself to 100%. You are an author. You've written plays, you've written books. Do the metaphysical gifts in you have a place in your writing as well? Because I know you do a lot of historical stuff. Does your metaphysical gifts and your psychic ability play in that?
It wasn't as clear as first. It's sort of like channeling or automatic writing. Even as a songwriter, you're just always writing down phrases or you're looking for patterns. So as an intuitive, I found that I could go to a place and feel something. So it could be as creepy as I went to this tree and I sat by the tree and the tree told me that there was a time where somebody got hung by that tree. And the tree remembered. So I said, well, this doesn't happen every day. Let me write this down. And then I began to find that all kinds of places and inanimate objects were the repositories of stories. Now, as an early kid, I am fascinated with military history. Probably by 3 or 4, I could tell you everything about this general and this battle and this war, anywhere in the world. How did I know this, right? And then I come across George Patton, general from World War II, who said that in many of the battles that he was involved in, he knew that he had been there before. This is a military man talking about reincarnation. I said, what? He had been there before. And I've been to a lot of places like that. Oh yeah, I've been here before. Especially if there was lots of grief or lots of love. It soaks the land like rain. If you go to Matanzas in St. Augustine, oh my God, you can go there and if you're at all sensitive, tears start coming to your eyes. I went there with some French people one time and they almost passed out. It was so intense. So again, I had to get these stories out. Not because I think they have any commercial value. It's because I don't want them crowding my internal space. And they're talking way too loud. Way too loud. So yes, I mean, there's one particular work that I will just say has had a 5-year run as a theatrical play. Um, and basically all of the characters have found me. And I wanted to meet them. Say hello. Tell me about your life. And let me tell you, many times we cried. We cried. And I think when they collectively realized, they said, this guy feels this so deeply. We'll share our stories with him. This is a gift that I treasure and share. So I figure more or less it's the only reason I'm still alive. Why am I here? There's no reason for this. I've had more fun than the law allows. I've wasted more money than anybody. But then, do I have any regrets? Absolutely not. I will tell you that of all the writing, though, theatrical and literary writing, that's tedious as hell. It's tedious. So for me to have been compelled to write any of these stories tells you a lot. Writing a song in comparison is fun.
I had a thought as you were saying these things. When you tell these stories, when these people contact you spiritually and they say, this is my story, and you tell that story, do you feel that there is a shift in the healing involved? Do you feel that in some way they are healed as spiritually as souls to have their stories finally told?
Oh, yeah. And sometimes, though, it's instantaneous. They'll tell you on the spot. See, most people, when they think about psychic phenomenon, they have, just like hypnotherapy, they have a very limited concept of what it's capable of. So a couple of things stand out just randomly. I know of someone who I did a reading for whose brother had died under troubling circumstances. And she loved her brother, and everyone in the family was heartbroken because they couldn't quite understand. There was something that didn't make sense. So I said to this person, I said, just tell me your brother's name. And I turned out the cards and tears are running down my eyes. And I said, I'm so sorry, but your brother was profoundly sad because he felt that he had not been made right. And she burst into tears because he was borderline developmentally disabled. But he was also a very handsome and outgoing kid. And as he got to be a teenager, he would meet girls and then they would realize that something wasn't quite right. And it hit him, he had no chance. He couldn't understand God. How can you put me on this earth to feel this pain and not have anywhere to go with it? So yes, his death was recorded as accidental. But as that person who asked for the reading, who shared it with her family, they knew that there was a lot more involved. It gave them great peace.
Yeah. Did it give him peace from the other side?
Oh, I felt most definitely.
Good.
Because he didn't have words for it.
Well, I think also he passed away unexplained and not being able to unfold. And I think maybe, I'm interpreting this, of course, that when he finally was able to have you express to his family what he had been unable to express, that might have brought his soul a lot of healing.
Oh, no doubt. I end up doing a lot of work like this with, connections with people that have passed on. Do they have a message? Can they explain why? I was doing a reading, and again, I didn't ask the person, hey, just tell me your question. And they said their question was, can you tell me what happened to Uncle Joe? And then I turned out a couple of cards, and I get this incredible headache. I usually hardly ever get headaches. And I'm like, holy shit, something just smacked the shit out of my head. And then I'm turning some more cards, and I go, well, I don't know who your Uncle Joe was, but he didn't die of natural causes. And they were like, yeah, that's what we've been thinking. And I'll tell you something else. And what about this person? Oh, it looks to me like they lied through their teeth. And what about this? Did anybody benefit financially? Oh, look at the 10 of diamonds. Oh, look at this card. Hey, take a look. You saw me shuffle the cards. There's 78 cards in this deck. If you ask me a question about Uncle Joe and what he thought about money, if he had some serious issues with it, it will come out in the cards every time. Every time.
That's crazy. That's wild. I know that that's stressful for you because, like I said, you and I have known each other for a long time. Is there sometimes, would you rather not have the abilities that you do?
No, because I was born with that.
Right.
As you know, I've always been really reluctant to advertise it, though.
That's true.
Generally speaking, I had kind of made an agreement with the universe that I'll do as many as I can and give it 110% whenever I do. But please be selective in the number of people that you send to me. Like now, I don't really do readings. If someone says, I've been dating a guy named Timmy, and he didn't call me on Tuesday. Can you tell me what's going on? Or not so much. Don't need the money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if someone has a meaningful question where they're at a significant juncture in their life, usually they come to me by referral. And so it's kind of like, well, gee, perfect. How can I help you? And I'll tell them in the first 5 minutes, you're going to know whether or not this is on target or not. Not going to waste your time or my time. So, but people definitely pay attention when you say something that was pretty much a direct quote of the person that they knew that you never met. They're like, oh my God, they used to say that all the time. Like, well, when I'm in that mode, I'm not filtering. I'm like, okay, messages. You just have to know where that on and off button is.
Right. Yeah, I think that's real important. It's important for every intuitive, every psychic to know that at some point they've got to turn that button off and live their human life as well. Would you agree?
Oh, very much so. In many of my colleagues that our psychic work really transformed itself when the 976 numbers first came out. In the beginning of that was actually legitimate. And people as a phenomenon were amazed. It's only when it turned into really big business and then 976 became sex lines. And then you had Miss Cleo and call me, we'll answer any question 24 hours a day. It just got absurd. So that was another reason not to advertise. Why would I tell anybody that I do this? Holy shit. But in that period of time, how many of my colleagues don't do readings anymore? When I ask half of them why not, they go, oh, I started doing I was doing it 50 hours a week. And then one day I didn't have it anymore. So my deal with the universe is I'd like to use it wisely and conserve my energy for the people and places who will need it the most.
I think that that's very wise. So you've had hypnosis with me for different things. Do you feel that hypnosis has opened up your inner life?
Beyond words. I tell you a lot. I can't thank you enough. You know that to be true. it opened every door for me. See, as an artist, you write a song and everybody loves you last week, and then you write another song and they go, oh, that fucking sucks. Do they still love you? How deeply did they love you to begin with?
Yes. And more importantly, can you sustain your own love of that regardless of whether they have it or not?
Right, right. And it begs the question, in terms of fandom, how can somebody love you that doesn't even know you? So the self-awareness, particularly through past life regressions, was of incredible value. Maybe more detail than you need to know. So again, that level of acceptance through the regressions and whatnot, I was able to see their journeys better. And you're carrying around all these people's stuff, some of which was psychic, but others was, the lineage of family time and the expectations of that one's ancestors place on you.
So is this where the divine guidance comes in? Because I know no human is going to tell you what to do to your satisfaction.
Exactly. And that's humbling. At first it's humbling, but then, at least for me, I said, I'm going to cultivate these relationships as though they are friends and that we are on this journey together. And we have conversations.
I know it was difficult for you as a child, and you weren't really in a place where you understood that you were unique. If you were talking to little James or another kid that was on the beginning of their journey like yours, what would you say to them?
I guess I would just say it's going to be all right. And that you weren't put on this world just to suffer. And that life was never promised to be all good. I mean, in our modern, the sort of quick fix self-help thing, everyone sort of assumes that every day is going to be all happy, happy, joy, joy. And that in your community, we'll all sing Kumbaya together. And just because in theory we make our own reality, that doesn't explain to me why there are people starving in Ethiopia or wherever they're starving, because nobody wants that reality. But in a larger sense, if I say everyone chose their life's path, then there's nothing in that path that was meant to crush that person, not with some sense of finality. So maybe if I could express that to a kid, is that whatever comes down to the pike, you were given enough strength as even a little bitty baby, not only to survive this, but to transform it into something that will sustain you and have incredible value, because most people couldn't have handled it. I couldn't have done my childhood again. No way. But I would also tell that young person, whenever you need me, you call. And if I'm dead, you call.
You got that direct line to heaven.
Yeah.
James, it's been so great to have your insights and your experience and your perspective. It's not like anybody else that I know. I appreciate you coming on to a higher dimension. And I know that your message of love and acceptance is going to reach a lot of people. Thank you very much.
You are quite welcome. I have no idea who or how many it will reach or in what way, but I always hope it has a positive effect. And from the bottom of my heart, I hope it has a positive effect on the number of people who will have the trust and faith in you and your ability to work this field. It would be a shame for most people to go through huge chunks of their adult life searching for answers that were already inside of them. They just didn't know how to get there.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Maybe we can interview again in 6 or 7 months.
You want me to sing?
No, I don't want you to sing. Thanks. Thank you very much. Okay, I will talk to you soon.
And that's a wrap. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope that I've managed to pique your interest, raise your curiosity, give you something to think about, teach you something that you didn't know before, or send you down a major rabbit hole. If you're curious about what I do, shoot me an email. Go on to my website, gloriadanvers.com, and book a free consultation. Let's discover something about you that you didn't know. I'll be back next week. And until then, stay curious and stay open to all the things that come in for you in a higher dimension.